the fuck is that Nintendo? And by the way, I already remember a game that I personally played way before Nintendo did this stuff. Yade Kokon. Yade Kokon was also a monster capture thing. Welcome, acolytes. Today I am reacting to Legacy Killer HD from Nintendo suit PALWORLD. Alleged stolen games mechanics. Death response. I mean, alleged game mechanics. What game mechanics? I mean, I'm gonna be honest, if you see PALWORLD, you don't see Pokemon. But hey, it is what it is, I guess. Let's just see what he has to say about it, and let's start. By the way, if you like my content, leave a like, leave a comment, notification button, and show me and Legacy Killer HD some love.
Earlier this year, one of the biggest success stories in video game history came about, and that was Pocket Pair's PALWORLD. Taking a lot of inspiration from Pokemon, it was dubbed pretty much, you know, Pokemon but with guns, but it was much more than that. I think it represented an actual evolution.
I'm gonna be honest, yes, it was much more than that. It was, I mean, it still had the same system. I mean, is Pokemon the freaking game or the ones that actually invented catching monsters and keeping them as pets? No. You always had dogs, or let's just say we tamed dogs, cats, freaking cows, pigs. So don't give me that shit. There is nothing. And the rest, fluffy animals, well, okay, if you wanna claim that. The other thing is there are some PALWORLD, the PALs, I think they are called, that look suspiciously like Pokemon, but at the end, Pokemon stole their Pokemon from Dragon Quest, so I don't give a fuck. But let's see how it actually goes.
Of the formula that Nintendo and Game Freak have been not doing that great with for the longest time, at least in gaming. What do I mean by that is, well, you can look at the numerous entries that have come about in recent years, and there's just a lackluster quality with a lot of the Pokemon games, and there's a dissatisfaction with what Nintendo and Game Freak have been producing, but ultimately, Pokemon is one of those too big to fail franchises. There's a couple of them, Call of Duty, Fortnite, FIFA, games like that, and those games can have such...
True. Those games can be shit as hell, and they still find people that actually will play it.
Massive controversy
or World of Warcraft.
Such massive launch disasters, but they ultimately will always go on to have massive sales figures no matter what, because the casual normal audience eat those products up, and that ultimately leads to the products stagnating in terms of quality, and that's been the core problem with Pokemon the last decade or so. So a game like PALWORLD, evolving the formula in a unique spin, different way, it was a breath of fresh air, and there's a reason why the game had like 2 million players at launch on Steam, massive sales success, and it was a surprise to everybody, not just the developers, but many players, and also the gaming industry, which had a lot of varying reactions. But on Steam, if you actually check the user reviews, it's always been very positive. It's a $30 game. It clearly has an end point, so it's not one of those games that I think people are going to be spending their whole lives playing. But they have been making new content. They have continued to iterate on its formula over time, adding new pals and all kinds of new islands and places and things to do.
Yeah, and that's correct. And they could just do new stuff, or maybe a new game mode, or just test the waters with the thing they have already. Maybe do a freaking castle defense thing. I would freaking dig that. Just make a PvP where you build up your base and then just clash it somewhere with somebody else, with your pals and your castle you have there. You have to invade the other enemy. It would be fine.
But it definitely is one of those games that you can drop the controller down and move on from. But still, it is extremely healthy, still has about 20,000 players daily. And it has, again, after each new update, it usually has a little bit of a growth in terms of its player base to around 100.
I have to start it again, by the way, because I didn't play it for a long time. But I should watch it like go.
And it slows down. But ultimately, the controversy surrounding PALWORLD has not slowed down. This has been the elephant in the room. This VGC article coming from January, PALWORLD embroiled in AI and Pokemon plagiarism controversy, social media users, and what do I mean by that is just Pokemon fanboys pretty much bringing up every single creature design, saying how they're so similar to Pokemon and how it has to be copyright infringement. But that really is a mischaracterization of a game that clearly parodies Pokemon in many ways. And then
and I mean, if you freaking do that, just look at the product you like and tell me it wasn't stolen from Dragon Quest or inspired from different things. Just get the fuck out, honestly. It's just so annoying that so many people just get so butthurt just because they invested thousands of hours in a game that's shit right now, and they just can't accept that it's just dying, that it's shit, and they eat shit, and they find it still tasty, and that's fine. If you wanna eat shit, eat shit. I don't care, but don't force me to eat your shit. And if I find something else that I like, fuck you, just let it be.
there's been so many debunked points that have been brought up by many of these individuals, and ultimately Nintendo has been hiding in the shadows for the longest time. They've given some statements which indicated they're investigating, but there hadn't been actual legal action until today. Now, it is worth mentioning again, these are some of the creature designs. I'm going to fast forward through a couple of them, but there's so many examples that you can pick from here, as you can see in these videos. They clearly took their inspiration from Pokemon, but there's...
Clearly, that's irrefutable. They definitively took inspiration from Pokemon.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and Pokemon has so many Pokemon that at some point you can actually stick to both of those together and see something coming out with PALWORLD. Or even if you think about something right now, there is probably a Pokemon, if you mix it with a different Pokemon, that looks like that.
That is usually covered by copyright, but yeah, there's a lot of different examples, a lot of different pals that look very, very similar. And this was the core issue with a lot of Pokemon fans earlier this year, saying, look, PALWORLD is just a direct ripoff of what Nintendo and Game Freak produced. But I do think the problem with that is the fact that Nintendo did the same exact
Yep. Nintendo did the exact same thing. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't give a shit. Why? Because it's different enough. And I don't know what freaks actually care about this. And if you ever see a freak actually arguing against you, just show him this. Just be like, okay, asshole, how about this? So you're defending a ripoff of a ripoff of a ripoff? Good job. Nice. I hope you completed a life goal with that. Damn. Honestly.
fucking thing with Dragon Quest years ago too, taking a lot of the creature designs and using it. So yeah, I don't find that really is a valid complaint. But there was also accusations.
Yes, and those ripoffs are, by the way, way worse than the thing that PALWORLD gets actually drawn to. And I still don't give a fuck. It's fine.
That the PALs were all AI generated. That was a massive one. That was because of the Pocket Pair CEO said he liked AI and NFTs and such. But again, this was pretty much debunked in interviews and stuff that had come beforehand, in which they said it took a month to make one PAL, just the 3D model. There was also, again, AI tweets that were taken out of context that Nintendo fans used again. So this has been a massive controversy for a while. And this all leads us to this. The legal action that was taken by Nintendo just the other day. They said filing lawsuit for infringement on patent rights. That's the interesting thing. They don't say copyright, they say patent rights against Pocket Pair.
Patent rights.
Nintendo, together with the Pokemon Company, filed a patent infringement lawsuit in the Tokyo District Court against Pocket Pair. On September 18th, the lawsuit seeks an injunction against infringement and compensation for damages on the grounds that PALWORLD, a game developed and released by the defendant, infringes multiple patent rights. What are these multiple patent rights? We do not know the specifics yet, and PALWORLD doesn't seem to either. Nintendo will continue to take necessary actions against any infringement of its intellectual property rights, including the Nintendo brand, to protect the intellectual properties it has worked hard to establish over the years.
I'm gonna be honest, what I think this is just to scare PALWORLD into actually giving up. Because this is a move that's not that rare. If you just scare someone with legal costs enough, because Nintendo has a lot of money, even if they are totally wrong about it, and I'm not saying there are, but if they are totally wrong about it, well, at the end of the day, they can outpay PALWORLD, probably.
Nintendo, the ninjas they are, everybody knew that legal action was coming. This was pretty obvious. They have been notable for their lawsuits against any company or anything that comes close to being just like Pokemon. And a lot of this is valid. We saw this was big news recently. They won a $15 million copyright lawsuit against a Chinese mobile game, which pretty much looked like a ripoff of Pokemon. It was far more blatant than what PALWORLD was doing. It was literally just Pikachu with like a little different haircut. PALWORLD, at least, it definitely looks different with a lot of the vibes, and a lot of the pals have notable differences. And then we did see this was another major thing that I think this was the major indication that legal action was coming eventually. I don't think people thought it was going to take 8 months, but we knew it was coming. Pokemon Company's former top lawyer calls PALWORLD rip-off nonsense.
I'm gonna be honest, I actually didn't think it was coming, simply because of the simplest thing, that they just didn't want to stand out like assholes. But well, I was clearly wrong about that.
So that was their former chief.
But yeah, and I mean, come on, dude. Honestly, come on. Just. But well, Nintendo will protect it. They will probably, if they actually succeed in this, they will do it way more often than they are already doing, and just, I think everyone that comes even close to looking like Pokemon.
Legal officer Don McGowan, and yeah, that's what he said at the time. We also had Nintendo's president commenting on PALWORLD in February. He said, "We will take appropriate action against those that infringe on our intellectual property rights." That was, again, in February, January. Those comments got a lot of people concerned that legal action was coming down the road, and here it is now. Now, it is worth mentioning that we did see some lawyers talking about this at the time. Richard Hogue of Hogue Law said anybody can sue anyone for any reason, so I can't tell you what Nintendo will or won't do about PALWORLD. I can tell you, however, they'd have a tough time winning on any infringement claim that isn't arguing a direct design copy, and there's no proof of that. There's been a lot of debunked claims put on social media and such, but nothing directly. And I don't even think that's necessarily what Nintendo is suing about here. We're going to get to that in a second so you understand what they're going after.
And by the way, just because something was shown on Twitter, fuck that. Those freaks don't do shit. 99% of those are just irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. They can say, I think like that, but that's all it is. At the end of the day, legally, it's worthless. Except in a very, very fringe case where maybe at some point.
The game itself is a Minecraft, Zelda, Monster Hunter, I would actually add Elden Ring in there, mashup unlike anything Pokemon.
Nah, he's correct, yeah. I agree with him. Yep.
Is put forth, so there's no winning there. The PAL designs have elements that are similar to Pokemon, but even though they fly a bit close to the sun, for my taste, that's a really hard case to win. Nintendo would be better served seeing what elements of the game might fit with its own brand. If it was only that easy. Now, this is the actual response coming from PALWORLD. They did respond to this lawsuit. They said, regarding it yesterday, a lawsuit was filed against us for patent infringement. We have received notice of this lawsuit and will begin the appropriate legal proceedings and investigations into the claims of patent infringement. And yeah, they better get...
Okay, I mean... So the legal thing didn't even begin. So it's more of a warning shot. Fair enough.
Ready, because this is a small indie company going against a company that has probably some of the best lawyers in the world, and they win a lot, as everybody knows the reputation for Nintendo and their lawyers and their legal action.
As I said,
at the moment, we're
the money. They have way more money than you, and a little indie company won't be as strong as it is.
Unaware of the specific patents we are accused of infringing upon, and we have not been notified of such details. Pocket Pair is a small indie company based in Tokyo. Our goal as a company has always been to create fun games. They've been very open about the fact that they're not crazy about originality. They look at other games for inspiration. They did that with Pokemon here. They've even said that they're fans of it, which isn't necessarily an indictment on, PALWORLD and what it's all about.
And it's not even a bad thing per se. If you still make it something of your own, that's fine then.
It just shows that they have a different way of going about game development. And hey, this industry is known for taking different things from one game and using it in their own. I think that's what makes products even better in the future. We will continue to pursue this goal because we know that our games bring joy to millions of gamers around the world. PALWORLD was a surprise success this year, both for gamers and for us. And they go on to say it is truly unfortunate that we'll be forced to allocate significant time to matters unrelated to game development due to this lawsuit. However, we will do our utmost for our fans and to ensure that indie game developers are not hindered or discouraged from pursuing their creative ideas. So yes, Pocket World is getting ready. They will fight Nintendo on this, and I don't blame them. It is worth mentioning this is what Nintendo is probably going after. We don't know the specifics yet. It's unclear if it is specifically, you know, the creature designs and such, but there's patents that were filed earlier this year which gives clear indication that Nintendo is trying to protect the idea of throwing a ball and catching, I guess, creatures. In one of the patent examples,
modes are aiming direction, visual space, and determine first to second up. Input in player character is caused to launch it in any direction. Item affects a field character dispersed on field in the virtual space based on hired operant input. What the oh, are you shitting me? Literally what he said. They are literally claiming that throwing a ball in the creature's direction and catching it that way is a pure Pokemon thing. This is so stupid. This is so freaking... It's just... Okay.
Examples that we have here by this user, the board bore, they bring up the storage medium storing game program patent. It goes on what it's called, but it says in a first mode, an aiming direction in a virtual space is determined based on a second operation input, and a player character is caused to launch in the aiming direction an item that affects a field character disposed on a field in the virtual space based on a third operation input. In a second mode, the aiming direction is determined based on the second operation input, and the player character is caused to launch in the aiming direction a fighting character that fights based on the third operation input. So pretty much what Nintendo is claiming that they own here is that this is what they filed for patents earlier this year. They're now suing, I believe, against Pocket Bear.
Wait. Based on the third operation characters launch in the game direction, fighting a character that... So they're also claiming that they basically own the rights to games that are third person, basically, if I understand it correctly. So third person games are actually Nintendo's idea. Remember this. Remember. Oh.
Is that they own the mounting system and the ability to throw a ball to summon, you know, and fight creatures. And all of this was filed in May of 2024. That seems to be what they say that they own. The ability to throw a ball. It shows math of, you know, the potential of catching that creature inside of that ball. That is what Nintendo is saying that they own. And there was another patent that was brought up here, another example saying that this one might also be relevant. These were all filed. This one was years ago based on first data transmitted from a game controller. A game apparatus executes game processing for catching a predetermined game character and transmits to the game controller second data corresponding to the game character as a target to be caught. This is specifically what I'm referring to. And this was filed in 2019. This is what Nintendo says. That I think that's what they say that they own. Based on the transmitted second data, the game controller outputs a sound corresponding to the caught game character. And adding this in for some better context, but Stephen Totillo, GameFile, again, he found Nintendo's patent from 2021 for a video game character throwing an item to catch a monster while out in the field. So it's really unclear like what the dates are, these patents and such.
Yeah, I mean, that's so irrelevant. How the fuck is that Nintendo? And by the way, I already remember a game that I personally played way before Nintendo did this stuff. Yade Kokon. Yade Kokon was also a monster capture thing. And yes, you basically captured a monster with a, not directly Pokeball, basically with light summoning shit. It's the same thing.
But yeah, Nintendo apparently has had this one existing for a while, and they actually even have a diagram of it here showing an individual character throwing a ball, catching what appears to be here a creature. So this is what Nintendo, this is the defense they're going for. It's basic game mechanics. The first patent we talked about, I think that was referring to, you know, throwing a ball, having a creature fight on your own behalf. And then this one's about being able to throw a ball and catch a creature. So all these basic mechanics with Pokemon, Nintendo is pretty much arguing, saying that they own it. This is what they own. Now, the precedent, unfortunately, has already been made, and this is why it may be a little bit, who knows where this goes, but GamesIndustry.biz has this article coming from a couple of years ago in which Warner Brothers actually successfully won a patent in which they secured the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor, you know, in which you have those unique encounters with different enemies that come about later on in the game. You may have one in which they kill you, then you come back later on, they're still there, and they still remember that encounter. Warner Brothers owns that, and there's a reason why no other developer can do this.
Oh yeah, this was so stupid. I still don't believe that the game devs didn't find a workaround. This is just, the Nemesis system is so beautiful, and Warner Brothers doesn't even use it. This should be, I'm gonna be honest, this should be somewhat illegal at this point. If you're not using the thing, just release it, it's fine. But
it's because Warner Brothers owns it. And as this article outlines, Warner Brother has been issued a patent for the Nemesis AI system found in Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, and War. According to IGN, the patent protects the Nemesis characters, Nemesis forts, social vendettas, and followers in computer games. The patent will go into effect on February 23rd, and it's maintained until 2035. Any developers who build game features that include all of the above aspects or enough to risk infringing on the patent must purchase a license from Warner Brothers, and who knows if Warner Brothers is even willing to do that. Now, ultimately, this was frowned upon from the gaming industry, as so many different developers have come forward saying that the gaming industry is all about iterating on things that have already existed. You see so many different elements that started in one game, then it's experimented in a bunch of other games, then those games make new stuff that goes in other. The gaming industry has always been about everybody, you know, iterating on what somebody else did beforehand. And the fact that we have patents like this is kind of disgusting, and it seems like Nintendo has been going down this road as well, and that's their argument against PALWORLD right now. And if successful, again, it reaffirms a very dangerous precedent in terms of the creativity of the gaming industry. Now, GameFile's Stephen Totillo, he had more on this, talking about this lawsuit. He mentioned the fact that in June at Summer Game Fest in Los Angeles, Pocket Pair's CEO said that about Nintendo and concerns, there had been none raised by Nintendo at this point with his company about the game, nothing at all. Nintendo and the Pokemon company didn't say anything to us because they were in the shadows investigating. We're getting ready for this lawsuit, trying to find any avenue to go after them, and it appears they have found one. Of course, I love Pokemon and I respect it. I grew up with it in my generation. And then it was also worth mentioning that Pocket Pair's community manager, John Bucky Buckley, tweeted his thoughts about Summer Game Fest, but he added a certain kind of reaction occasionally came up. PALWORLD is still the boogeyman for some people. Obviously, we're more than aware of all the PALWORLD discourse that floated around at launch. PALWORLD was made with AI false. PALWORLD stole assets false. PALWORLD is being sued false, and unfortunately, that last point is now true.
Yeah, sadly.
Now, it is worth mentioning this, again, there's been so much controversy. These are some of the posts from earlier this year that we were talking about at the time in January. I thought I'd quickly go over it. There was so much praise, but there was also the divisiveness was crazy with this game. Somebody bringing up here, again, it's a $30 game, offers more content than $70 AAA cash grab, lets you create Western orcs or beautiful characters, freedom of choice, fun, no microtransactions. Again, these are some of the reasons why I really did enjoy PALWORLD. Again, it was also just the enjoyable nature of its gameplay, but there is an endpoint. There is a point in which I feel like I did almost everything I wanted to with the game, and I moved on. I feel like that's why the game has lost a lot of players, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's something that PALWORLD's developers have even said. Just because a game, not every game has.
Yeah, and there are some hardcore things you can do even after you're finished. You can breed the perfect PAL at some point with the perfect passives or the legendary. So yeah, it's, if you're finished, you're finished. But if you're actually willing, you can find some things you can do for yourself.
Has to have over 100,000 players consistently for years to come to be considered a success. And yeah, don't play PALWORLD. It's a Pokemon ripoff, and then the comparisons to what Pokemon's been producing, there's just so many of that. Another person pointing out that it's, I'm so happy to see Nintendo fumble such an easy bag. Pokemon on PC was the biggest untouched gold mine ever, and PALWORLD is grinding away at it right now, well deserved. Another individual saying PALWORLD is a deeply annoying kind of game to watch get popular, But if through some freak event it actually gets big enough to make Game Freak a little less complacent, that wouldn't be the worst thing. And I agree with that latter part of that statement. PALWORLD feels like this year's Hogwarts Legacy, where it's selling a bunch and is embroiled in a ton of online controversy, but after a month or so, it's barely going to be on a blip on the internet radar. It stayed on Nintendo's radar, though, unfortunately. And it ultimately, a lot of people moved on from talking about this game in the months to follow. And we even saw game developers at the time talking about its pretty much giving pause to the people going after it, saying, as a game designer, I'm baffled that some say this is lazy. Even if you copy an idea from another game, you can just copy/paste it. Even doing a sequel to your own game with the same programmer and a new engine, it takes crazy amount of time to develop a viable version 2.0 of a mechanic. Very much the point I was trying to make earlier on. Probably didn't word it all that well, but I think this puts it in a lot better perspective. And this new element mechanic concept now has to work together with a ton of other new things. Catching a creature to use it in combat exists in Pokemon, base building exists in Ark and Fallout 4 and Fortnite, but making sure it plays well together, the specifics of the 3C, feedback, balancing, etc., makes it that taking two things and smashing them together in a way that works and is approachable to mainstream players is not an easy feat. If only for that I'd take an offense in lazy being thrown out. And these are the accusations that were thrown endlessly around earlier this year. PALWORLD's overwhelming success is the first step of the normalization of generative AI slop games, which is really, really depressing. 10 years ago, an asset flip game like this would have been relentlessly ridiculed. That's not the case. That's not what PALWORLD is about. Another individual, this one pretty much debunking the point that this game is not AI generated, and even actually has a community note pointing out that Steam requires games to disclose when they contain AI generated content. Reading some of the PALWORLD Discord as an artist is very depressing. I didn't want to know this is how little some people care about artistic integrity, and it goes on and on. I mean, there's so many different posts going after the game, accusing it of things that are not the case. This was the controversy earlier this year. People bringing up all kinds of facts about their experience with the developers, the fact that they're known for making non-original games. That's not an indictment on who they are or the fact that they're infringing Nintendo at all, in my opinion. This was some of their games. This is their menu comparing it to Ark. They took inspiration. They were very obvious about that. Even with, you can see with the Elden Ring right here, they have the churches in there, the same little arenas. They took inspiration. And it also just points to the fact that they weren't just taking ideas from,
Come on, are you really saying that a teleportation circle is something new? Even if they took inspiration, it's fine. It's like, come on. The churches, because ruins are so I don't know what freaking deaf people actually find this to be a direct copy. Ruined churches aren't nothing new. It happens because I myself actually quite like visiting those old buildings, those historical buildings.
Nintendo,
and even if they, and as I said, if they took inspiration, it's fine.
They're taking it from various different games, and it worked. And there's a lot of, as the game developer from Arcane pretty much pointed out, this isn't just something that's lazy or very easy to do, especially to make it something that explodes to the mainstream audiences like this did. But there's just so many posts that we were talking about earlier this year. Looking at it, it's actually kind of baffling how much controversy was associated with this game. It's funny how we spent the last few months talking about YouTube plagiarism and AI stealing from creators being bad, but only to reward a game doing both with 2 million plus sales with no proof at all, unfortunately. And so this has been pretty much the sentiment surrounding PALWORLD for a long time, and it's only revived with this recent lawsuit from Nintendo. And this is another big thing. People are talking about stolen or borrowed content, going after the game for having Unreal Engine 5 default assets. That's not necessarily a bad thing coming from an indie developer. I don't know why this has to be something that's used against the game.
I mean, if it fits, it fits. I mean, if you see too much of it, then yes. But it's still an indie developer. In this case, yes, it's still an indie developer and they're building up. And now that freaking Nintendo actually sued them, it will somewhat stop their development. Because they could make another great game. But no, the fuckers at Nintendo actually just had to sue them.
This is what I mean. People are just grasping at straws with some of the criticism that they had for the developers. And like I said, some of the concerns, some of the complaints, they're definitely, I can understand it a little bit, but a lot of this has been debunked, and inspiration is very different than directly copying, and there has been no proof of actual copying. But in terms of the actual patents and such, that's where we get into a little bit more of gray territory, and that's where I think PALWORLD may be in trouble, but also could set another dangerous precedent for this gaming industry.
Yeah, I mean, they could get in trouble nonetheless. They could just be unlucky and have someone who actually just dislikes PALWORLD and says, no, I don't care about it. Or some freaking old guy that has no idea about it. Or just somebody that likes PALWORLD and says, nah, it's fine. Go through.
In terms of, ideas and such that cannot be messed with because of a patent being there.
And I'm gonna be honest, if this is the problem, because as I understood, it's a round thing that they're just make it a, I don't know, like, just make it not a circle, a triangle.
And it just means future games will not be able to even touch that specific game mechanic or idea, which creates, I think, less fun experiences in the future, in my opinion. But anyway, this is the big lawsuit Nintendo has filed against PALWORLD. All
good. And as he said, yeah, sorry, Acolytes, I'm freaking tired tonight. But still could actually give a bit more energy than usually if I'm so tired. But so, that's that. But as it is, good night.